Hello once again. This is Matt with another practical tips video. This time we're going to be talking about how to do your budget in Excel. For those of you who have some basic Excel skills, this should be fairly straightforward. If you need to learn a little bit more about Excel and have a little practice, this won't be too complicated. So if you don't, go ahead and practice a little bit with some basic formulas. But I want to go ahead and show you this because I think this is a really useful tool. And you'll find here that there's a lot of features here that can help keep your finances on track and maybe make some productive adjustments to your maybe your monthly bills and some other things as we go along here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to break this down. We basically have 4 sections here that we're going to cover on this spreadsheet, going from left to right. And we're going to start with the income section over here on the left. So you can see here, as in a typical situation, we have income, dollar amount, and date. Okay, so those are fairly basic information, pretty straightforward, self-explanatory. Got a total down here. The one thing is maybe a little bit different than some budgets is that this is designed to actually work with the actual balance that's in your checking account. This is also set up to work really well with things like online banking, for example, as well as being able to log in to your various accounts with, say, your utility companies or what have you, and be able to get those balances that whatever your current bill is, and be able to enter that information in here. So I do have here in the income section, we do have what I call carry in, which is basically just the amount of your checking account balance that carries over from the previous month. So in this case, we just used $100. These are all just sample dollar amounts that I've put in here just to kind of demonstrate how this works. So down here at the little lower section here, we have the savings account showing a balance and a date. That would just be the date that you most recently had updated the account balance there. So that's, again, fairly simple. Where things really are going to start getting interesting is over here in the expense section. So you can see here I have several columns. We've got the type of expense, the dollar amount, the date. Then I have the day of the week, and I also have a notes section. Okay, notes, of course, maybe you have something that's a one-time bill. Maybe you're paying something, it's maybe an income tax bill, or sometimes, car registration oftentimes is only once a year, right? So you could put a note in there about that. But what this does, of course, these are sorted in date order, obviously, from the beginning of the month. And then what we have going on here is that we have a day of the week. And the reason that I have this day column in here, and I'll let you look at this formula here real quick, which is really handy. And this basically helps you to know, is this really going to process on time? So if you have something set up in here for, say, an automatic payment, which might be something you could put in the notes column, then you have the option of knowing, okay, this bill is scheduled on a particular day of the week. Is it going to process through kind of like normal, or is there going to likely some delay based on the day of the week? Because a lot of these things are not going to process, if any of them, on the weekends. So if you see a Saturday or a Sunday show up in this day column, you may have an issue, and you're either going to need to pay that bill the next earlier business day, or maybe this thing is, if it's auto pay and there's not much you can do about it, then it may have to go through on the following business day, and hopefully you don't end up with any problems as far as a late fee or anything like that. But it does at least let you know if the bill is scheduled for a regular business day, or if it's scheduled on a weekend when you may not really be able to pay. You might be able to go to your online banking website and initiate the payment on a weekend, but it probably won't transact through until the following business day, which would usually be another Monday. So that kind of gives you an idea there. And then of course we have the total here. And then what I've also done here very conveniently is to put in here the remainder, which is basically the total income minus the total expenses. So this gives you a ballpark idea of, okay, this is the amount of money that should at least be left over when you get to the end of the month. So that tells you, okay, you got some idea of how your spending is going. And of course, if you wanted, you could put in a percentage or something like that. But in any event, that gives you a good overall look at your expenses, and you can see, what the order is. And then we go over here, and I've got a section I call financed balances. And basically, this is any kind of balance that you may owe on some sort of a loan, something that's financed. Could be car loan, credit card, boat loan. You could put your mortgage in here if you wanted to. Could be a student loan, something along those lines. And I have this set up so that you have a real basic situation here. So for example, I'm showing a credit card with a $200 remaining balance. The normal monthly payment is $20, and therefore we do the math, and it shows you there's 10 months left to pay on that balance to get down to zero. So that gives you some idea there. And then if we go over here to the far right, we see what I call the checking projection section. Now this is designed to work like checkbooks did or do. And basically what you do is you put your starting balance up in the very top cell here, and you can see there's just the dollar amount. There's no formula there. Okay. And then basically what we do is we go through and we go down to this next cell, and you'll see that we go ahead and we add in whatever the positive number is in kind of this plus column or the income column basically. And then we also have a minus or a debit column, okay, for the money coming out. And so we subtract that out next, and then that gives us our new balance that we see there. In this case, we're putting in a $1,500 paycheck, which you can see that makes perfect sense. If you go back over here to the income section, you'll see, oh yeah, there's a $1,500 paycheck on the 4th. So that's one of the first transactions hitting this account. Now, the reason that this checking projection section is here is to kind of allow you to project forward into the future and be able to see a couple of different things. One, some people I've worked with and occasionally helped with budgeting have found that you sometimes have a problem with maybe, for example, overdrafting a checking account, and it's really not that they don't make enough money to pay a particular bill. It's just that the timing of some of their bills is in the wrong order compared to when their paycheck gets automatically deposited. Okay, so if their bills were scheduled on a different due date, they'd be fine. They wouldn't be hit with that, usually about a $35 fee for overdraft. Which of course you really don't want to do, and it's not good for your credit score either, by the way. So this checking projection allows you to look and see, okay, is it possible that maybe some of my bills are not timed right, they're scheduled on the wrong due date, and I need to maybe contact the company and say, hey, can we move this date out? Okay, now not all of them will move them, but there's quite a few that will. So sometimes that may be just all there is to it. Instead of, paying a bill and paying the extra overdraft fee of another $35, you don't need to do that. So sometimes you can avoid that and just get this rescheduled. And then going beyond that, one of the other things you can do is you can see, okay, if I look at all my basic expenses and my income for the month, I can see, okay, this is the balance I should be ending up with at the end of the month. So then what does that tell me about anything I might have left should an emergency expense come up, right? So let's say, you're going along, you have this checking projection put in here, and you say, well, okay, somewhere along in here, you end up with, say, a $500 emergency repair on your car, let's say. It's like, ooh, I got this, the technician's telling me, hey, I got to pay this $500 on this, or I'm not going to have a car to drive, and I got to get to work. So, okay, so you have to pay that. Well, can you really can you really afford that? So that's the next question. So you can say, okay, I can take this out. It's like, oh, okay, it looks like I still have room. My balance at least won't go down to zero. So it looks like I can probably pay that, depending on a little bit on the timing. And that's another thing that you can kind of work with on this too, is you can kind of adjust. And I basically just did a kind of a simple copy and paste here to put in these example paychecks and the expenses. But you can play around with the timing of them and see, okay, well, if these bills shifted around a little bit, if they had different due dates, how would that affect how the balance looks like, throughout the month? So that gives you a lot better idea going forward. It's like, oh, okay, this is how my money is coming in and out and this kind of thing. And you can see too, it's like, okay, maybe I have an opportunity to set aside more in savings. Maybe I can make extra payments to pay off my credit card, which, by the way, that's another video. So you can go through and have a really good look at this, and you can really kind of understand better, how is my money going into and out of my checking account? How is this impacting how I'm paying my bills, my ability to pay my bills? And maybe I can do better with setting aside more money in savings or something along those lines. And thus you can get better control over your finances and really manage everything the best way that you possibly can. So just wanted to show you this as a really useful tool. Normally when I create one of these spreadsheets, I usually over the course of the year, I just copy these. So what I'll do is I'll go down here to the tab down at the bottom, and I'll right click, and you can see here we can do move or copy. So you'd select that, and if you want to make this for the next month, I've got March, so the next one would be April. So then what I would do is I'd go down here, check the little box that says create a copy, and I would click on there to click move to end, and then I'd click OK, and then of course Excel would add that in. Now what happens is, of course, Excel will create another tab with the same name, and it'll just say, in this case it would say March 2021, and then in parentheses the number 2, showing you, hey, this is the second tab with this name. And then I just go in and rename it with the current month that I want. So by the time I'm done with the end of the year, I have one spreadsheet that has 12 tabs that have the entire month, the entire year rather. So then you can go through and you can look and see, hey, how's my budget varied month to month? So you now have, besides having a really good monthly budget tool, at the end of the year, you can go back and kind of reevaluate and look at how your budget, changed month to month, different things. You have kind of a record of different things that happened, especially if you've left yourself some good notes. And then, okay, I've got you can maybe see certain patterns or trends going throughout the year, because by the time you're done, you've got 12 months of data, and you should be able to figure out some things from that. I also point out too, by the way, that it's a good idea. Sometimes you have notes that you have to make, just temporarily. I've had different situations come up. We had a situation where one of the utility companies was bought by a bigger company. So it's like, okay, well then that might affect the payment due date or something like that. And so then you can put in a note, and I just do an insert and put in a text box. And so I'll just put a little floating text box in there for the 1 month, and now I've got a note, and that way I've got the information. It's a good reminder. Okay, I can make it whatever color text or fill that I want in the text box, and so it'll get my attention when I need to see it. And because it's in a text box, it doesn't impact any of the calculations going on in the spreadsheet. There's no formulas are affected at all. So that's another handy trick that you can use to work with your budget. So thank you for your attention for this video, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. This is Matt. Thank you.